Hello, welcome to Animation 1-to-1s from Skwigly.com. I'm Steve Henderson and I'm freshly returned from the Annecy Festival with an interview with Inside Out 2 director Kelsey Mann and producer Mark Nielsen. The Pixar sequel once more voyages into the mind of Riley and sees the return of joy, sadness, fear, disgust, and anger as their girl enters puberty, and Headquarters sees the introduction of newcomers' anxiety, envy, embarrassment, and ennui, who all take control of Riley, launching the original emotions on an epic quest to regain Riley as she heads to hockey camp and needs the team more than ever. So far as sequels go, this is a very welcome one, packed full of original ideas and new directions for the core characters, all made with the Pixar quality we've come to expect from their more classic films, including some animation styles such as 2D and cutout, which you would never expect from a Pixar film, showing that this is a studio that's still innovating and still delivering. If you loved the first film, you won't be disappointed with this one. So I sat down with director Kelsey Mann and producer Mark Nielsen for an animation 1-to-1 where we discuss loads of things. We discuss sequels, art styles, Easter eggs, the possible future for Lance Slashblade, a loving tribute to Pixar veteran Ralph Eggleston, and so much more.
My name is Kelsey Mann and I'm the director of Inside Out 2.
And I'm Mark Nielsen, the producer of Inside Out 2.
Fantastic. We're here in Annecy. There's just been an incredible screening of the film with an immense audience reaction. You must feel very proud of being able to deliver this film.
We've had a lot of emotions making this movie, but I'd say right here, right now, especially in Annecy, joy is definitely on our conscience.
So much joy. You know, it's a 4-year process, 400 people involved. You go down a lot of roads. It can be challenging at times, but yeah, to be here and have a finished film that we're proud of is pretty great.
Fantastic. Obviously, Disney and Pixar have been in discussion recently regarding sequels, but it's such a delight to see those negative voices silenced by this work. Can you explain the want for a sequel and what drives that creation in Pixar? Is there a line? It has to be this funny, or it has to be this brilliant, or it has to be this so on to make a sequel?
I mean, every movie we want to be great, regardless if it's original or a sequel, you know. But we definitely, I mean, we've got a high bar at Pixar.
It's a high
for
bar.
Everything.
It's a high bar for every film, for sure.
Yeah, but especially in a film that, a follow-up to a film that everybody really, really loves. We want to make sure that we get it right, you know. And I find with this, like, sometimes I find when you're saying you're doing a sequel, sometimes you're met with somebody crossing their arms, going like, "Why? Tell me why you're doing that." You know, I don't think you should be doing that. And I always wanted to pitch. I was kind of expecting that in the very beginning. I was expecting to have people go, "Oh, you're making Inside Out 2? Why are you doing that?" You know, and I wanted to earn. I wanted to be able to pitch to that person what I want to do with the movie, and have them react like, "It's pretty good." And then have them relax and put their arms down. So that was always kind of my goal from the very beginning, to convince even those people that we're doing it for a reason. And we're telling another story, not because we just want to, but we have a reason to do it. But I will have to say, what I've really learned with the Inside Out kind of world is that people don't meet me with crossed arms when I say I'm doing an Inside Out 2 sequel. They meet me with open arms. And they're like, "How old is she? What is she doing? What is Riley up to?" And you're like, "Oh, people really they wanted another story." And so, I mean, they want to make sure that you don't screw it up, but they're definitely leaning forward and going like, "Oh, cool, be careful, don't screw it up," you know? So we got kind of that reaction to it.
Yeah.
But it's really in the development stage that you evaluate how the movie is coming together. Pete Docter is our chief creative officer, so he oversees all the films. And it's really during that stage when you're iterating creatively on the story to see if you've got something worthy of making. And that's where a movie will either continue on and get made, or they'll just stop it if it's not going well enough.
Yeah.
And obviously the first film was based on Pete Docter's daughter.
Yeah.
So you must have been absolutely terrified having the boss breathing down your neck, and you know, what are you doing with his baby girl and things like that.
Have you met Pete Docter? Pete Docter is such a lovely man.
He's a pretty gentle
He's
boss.
so humble and so collaborative. I love working with Pete. You know, I've had a chance to do it over the years that I've been at Pixar. 2009 is when I started. I've never been on a Pete Docter movie. I mean, I did Monsters University, so I've worked with Pete, you know, in that capacity as an executive producer. You know, Pete and I are both from Minnesota. We actually grew up just like
Michigan.
Well played.
No.
That was good. We were both from, you know, the same area, just a town away from each other. And in fact, the first studio I ever worked at was a commercial studio in Minneapolis. And they were like, hey, there was this guy named Pete. He's now in the Bay Area making a movie, you know, and it was Pete Docter. So I feel like I've been following in his footsteps for many years. Maybe I'm a bit of a stalker. Maybe that's what it is.
And you know, the first film it came out of the idea of like what's going on inside my daughter's head as he saw her change from someone that was more like not conscious about what her friends thought, and then all of a sudden noticed what they were thinking of her. Yeah. It wasn't really that he based Riley on her. It was more the idea of, he got the idea to go, what's going on inside someone's head based on just seeing the change that he saw in her.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a lot of freedom in Riley and developing Riley and her future that's disconnected from Pete's relationship with his daughter.
Yep.
Fantastic. And obviously a is a major character in this new film.
Yeah.
It's a tricky subject, and it's handled with such sympathy in the film. I think it's handled perfectly.
Yeah.
Were there moments in the development where the character was going to be more overtly villainous, or were there ever any kind of discussions around the character?
Yeah, 100% yes. In the very beginning, she was very villainous, you know, and too much so. And I always wanted her to be the antagonist in the movie, because I'm like, that's different, you know. Going back to talking about sequels real quick, I got some really good advice early on from one of the directors at the studio. He said, the sooner you start thinking of this film as an original, the better off you're going to be. I was like, that's pretty good advice. I made a list of all my favorite sequels, and I'm like, and I made a list of ones I didn't think were as successful. I'm like, why do I like these? And why do I not like these? And I think it has to do with what the advice I got. Like, the ones I liked were doing something new and different and expanding the world, opening new doors in the world I didn't even know were there. And the other ones just repeated it and was just like, let's just run that again. Worked before, let's just do it again. And so kind of came at this film with that kind of angle. So going back to anxiety, I'm like, I want to do a takeover movie. The first film, Joy and Sadness were accidentally thrown out of headquarters. I'm like, what if they're purposely locked away, like sent away, and not just the two of them, but everybody, all of them, you know? And I'm like, that's different. And I really like that. So she was always meant to be the antagonist, but in the beginning, she was really mean. And we didn't like her. Every time she was on screen, you're like, you just didn't want to spend time with her. And it wasn't working. I also didn't feel true to anxiety. And so we really talked to our experts, our emotional experts, as to like, why do we have anxiety? What is she trying to do? Like, well, our anxiety is there to try to protect us. You know, all of our emotions have a purpose. So the purpose of anxiety is to protect us from perceived threats. Like, fear is the feeling you get of a known threat. Like, if you see a tiger, you're like, ah, you feel fear because you see it, it's right there, right? Anxiety is the fear of the perceived threat. So if like a bush shakes and you're like, oh, that might be a tiger, you know, it's better to assume that that is a tiger because that'll keep us alive. And then, you know, there's a lot of bushes everywhere. You know, it's better to assume there's tigers everywhere. That, you know, you can go too far with it, but it's coming from a place of protection and love. So we switched it. We're like, well, anxiety should love Riley just as much as joy does. And then the movie started to really work because it really felt like you liked watching her because you knew why she was doing what she was doing. I would always tell the crew, I'm like, we're doing a movie about two parents who are arguing over how to best take care of their child, but they're both doing it from a place of love, but they're both doing it wrong. That's the movie. And suddenly it started to work a lot better. So you were totally
I
right.
have to credit Maya Hawke a little bit too, because she brings a real humanity to that character.
Oh, yeah.
Because when we're first building these movies up, we're using scratch voices. It's just
Yeah.
Pixar people doing the voices. And I love Pixar people. They're very talented, but they're not actors. And so we had an anxiety voice that didn't have that same empathy that Maya brings to it.
Yeah.
So as soon as we cast her and got her voice cut in, which is a few years into our process, it really started to turn a corner
Yeah.
on people liking to spend time with that character.
It's very similar to what the first film did with Amy Poehler with Joy, because we had the same problem on the first film where no one liked Joy. The movie was working, but no one liked Joy. So,
It was a problem.
It was a big problem. And then once we cast Amy, who's equally as talented and amazing, suddenly everybody loved Joy
Yeah,
overnight.
the note just went away.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, congratulations on some of the worst Pixar animation I've ever seen. I suppose that needs some context is needed for that one.
Oh, wow, okay, yeah, sure.
I see where you're going.
For that sense, I hope you do. But hopefully you understand where I'm coming from. Some fantastic artistic choices made in terms of you can breathe now. Using the animation in this film, you really push and play with different animation styles. Purposefully, very different to the carefully rendered, technologically driven and spectacular look of the main cast.
So fun. That scene is so much fun, and all the different styles in there are so
Yeah, and one of my favorites. It's probably also one of the things you're thinking about is just showing the difference between how joy projects the future and anxiety projects the future. Right? She's got these beautiful projections that anxiety cooks up and uses people in imagination to land to create that look very real and very believable. And so when Joy gives it a shot. It's kind of like paper cutout animation. It's very simple and crude. It's kind of the best she can do. Yeah,
we kept saying that Joy plays checkers and anxiety plays chess.
Right, that makes sense.
So the styles are kind of similar there too.
Yes.
But there's a lot of really fun kind of different styles, animation styles we've been able to do in this movie, which is really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
The hard part was always making sure that the team doesn't go too far. We kept dialing things back over and over again. We're like, that's too good.
Yeah.
That's too good. It needs to be, if there's story reasons, it needs to be dialed back a little bit. Like the Bloofy and Pouchy characters are from a preschool TV show. We're like, they have a limited budget, and so they don't have like a feature level animation kind of budget that a lot of people have worked on. A lot of people at the studio have a history of working at other places, and especially like 2D, or gaming. There's a lot of people who have came from games, and that was super fun to do because talk about like dialing ourselves back a little bit. We are trained to see intersections in our film. Intersections are when the character's body goes through the floor or a prop or something.
Their hair
We're like,
goes through their body.
Yeah, their hair is like, that's going through her shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
We need to fix that intersection. But a character like Lance Slashblade, who comes from a video game, a very specific, kind of style of video game, we were asking ourselves if we have enough intersections. Because his hair is just going right through the sword, and we're like,
leave it.
Perfect, done.
Leave it.
I think it delivered one of the biggest laughs in the auditorium was Lance when he's walking through the door, trying to get through the door.
Oh,
You know what, dude? I'm so glad that you say that, because that was on the cutting room floor at one point.
Wow.
It was cut out of the film. That, getting the right pacing, telling a good story is great. You also need to have great pacing.
Mm-hmm.
You can overstay your welcome or go too fast. And luckily we've got a wonderful editorial department led by Marissa Horowitz, who helps us figure out that pacing. That scene was so much fun to do. Ideas just kept coming out. There's a lot of characters in that scene too, so you want to make sure everybody has a moment. And it was too long, but it was hilarious Like we cut stuff that I think is really fun. Actually, I know it's really funny.
Yeah.
And
The anger and pouchy.
I know, yeah,
It's
yeah.
pretty upbeat.
But it's all for the good of the film, and we need to take like a minute and a half out of that scene, and we pulled. Marissa did a pass, so Marissa will go off, do a pass on it, and then we'll come back in, and she'll say, "I cut out, a minute 40," and she doesn't tell us what, and then we just watch it, and then there's some stuff that I don't even miss, and she'll say, "Did you notice I cut that out?" I'm like, "No." She's like, "Well, there you go," But every once in a while, I'll be like, "I noticed you cut that out," and every once in a while, I'll be like, "That was the right call," even though I know it's gone. That's the right call. It's a really smart call. But there was moments like him not being able to get through the door. I'm like, I think we need to put it back in.
Funny.
And so she's like, "No problem."
Funny enough to keep.
And she's like, "No problem," because it's a really short little beat. It's not too long or anything. And maybe we're like, maybe he can say it as he's saying his dialogue. So we kind of doing two things at once. And we watch the movies over and over and over again. And at a certain point, you stop laughing because you've seen it 100 times. And I have to remember the first time I saw it. And so I started to get worried. And I'm like, when no one's laughing at this, maybe I made the wrong call. But then I went to a theater and saw it with somebody who had never seen it, and they all laughed. So anyway, yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a nice encapsulation, and it's nice to be able to play with those video game characters within a world, with bringing them to life and within there. I think if you did make a Lance Slashblade short film, you're going to have a very welcome reaction, especially at Annecy, I think.
Oh, that would be
That's
amazing.
great. Maybe a love story.
We would have to get discussed.
Yeah.
Lisa LaPera would love to do it. And Yang Ye, who
Yang
does the
Ye.
voice, yeah.
Because
They would love to do
those
that.
two should both be in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like perhaps the most film for animators Pixar's ever done. There's some beautiful moments which seem to be made especially with animators in mind. I'm thinking about the pillow fort, I'm thinking about that kind of fantastic excuse to show off animation. There was a very knowing audience laughing away there.
Oh, yeah.
But also a great homage to Apple's 1984.
Yes, you noticed that. Okay, good. Yeah. We totally referenced that when we made that. But as far as like the animation side of it, when we came up with the idea of like, in essence, a worst case scenario kind of factory, we imagined cubicles and a bunch of people typing on computers, kind of setting like code or something and having an image appear from like typing on a computer. And then it was really our art department. It was Jason Deemer, our production designer, and Josh West, who is our sets art director.
Yeah.
The two of them were like, feels like there should be something more whimsical and interesting with this rather than a bunch of boring cubicles. Like, we want it to be oppressive, and not super fun, but it's in imagination land. They're taking the power of play and using it to kind of come up with horrible scenarios of what could happen to Riley. But like, how could they use it in a fun way? And then they pitched to us like, what if they're drawing them? Like, what if there's a down shooter and there's like, a camera down shooter and they're drawing the ideas?
Tables, yeah.
And then we're like, well, wait, what if it's animation discs? And it's kind of like an animation studio in there. And I was super excited about that because, we obviously love animation. And, I also like how it was a bit of an oppressive area. Pixar is a wonderful place to work at. But I worked at some studios in the past that felt oppressive. And I felt like I was chained to my desk, while I was drawing. So there's a little bit of that feeling kind of in this scene. It's not any kind of reference to Pixar, but it's definitely references to places that I've worked in the past, or ways that I've felt, definitely.
There's kind of a nod in there too to Dream Productions from the first film, because there's the reality distortion filter that's on the lens. So they do a drawing and quickly it can just translate it to look like something in Riley's world.
Yeah. Do you want to hear something cool about that scene, this Easter egg that I've never told anybody?
Of course, yes please.
when Joy is asking for help, asking somebody, it's kind of that Jerry Maguire moment, like, who's coming with me? Who's coming with me, right? She's asking, like, come on, like, who wants to come to my side? And one little worker comes to her side. And she's like, hey, I see you, 87. 87 is a little mine worker being Ralph Eggleston. Are you familiar with Ralph? Ralph was the production designer on the first film. He's been, he was at the studio since Toy Story.
Since Toy Story.
And he's a near and dear colleague of all of us at the studio. And we have sadly lost him. He just passed away
during our production.
During the production of the film. We wanted to do a little nod to Ralph. And so that little mine worker is a Ralph Eggleston caricature.
And if you look at the walls of his cubicle, there's even some artwork like from For the Birds, which is a short film that he directed and created.
I just think it's
cubicle.
So beautiful and poetic that we put Ralph in the world that he created. I think it's really beautiful.
Oh, there's just a lot of personality for the 3 or 4 seconds that he was on screen. Just
yeah, down to his
right.
hat. I mean, his hat and his sunglasses.
His pastels. He's got pastels.
Yeah.
That's what he'd always draw with. It's sitting there on his table.
Yeah.
So whoever's animating obviously had that love and respect, and that's really projected on screen. That's lovely. I was going to ask you.
Yeah, and I love he's coming to Joy's rescue.
Yeah, very nice. And it is a nice moment in the film because there's a nice beat in that story where Joy gets to use the room as a way of protecting Riley and regains that connection.
Yes.
It's very, very nice. The film itself is full of original things. We've got brainstorms, we've got sarcasms, there's all these fantastic ideas. It must have been great fun writing and picking up on these new areas to explore.
It's fun. Sometimes they come from different areas. Sometimes you're like, okay, we need a story reason, like the Secrets Vault. Well, the Secrets Vault is kind of a combination of things, but we're like, we need a story point in which the emotions need to be locked up somewhere. Where could you get locked up in the mind, right? Sometimes story reasons birth an idea. Or the other way around is sometimes you don't have a story reason at all of what you're doing. And like a story artist will come on the show and I'm like, why don't you, don't think about the story at all. Just go off and think of fun places we can go in Riley's mind now that she's a teenager. Don't worry about the story, just come up with funny stuff. I think the sarcasm came from that. You know, and then we're like, oh, that's really funny. How do we put it into the story? You know, and then we figure it out later. So you kind of attack things from different angles.
Fantastic. There are loads of lovely Easter eggs throughout. We've already discussed a lovely Easter egg, but I did notice somebody on a shelf as well, which
you did.
Yes.
Oh, good eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yes. Some people have missed that, you know, and you caught it in the first viewing.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
This is some of the sleeping scene in the headquarters bunk room.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you see there's a Pizza Planet truck made out of origami that's also...
Don't give it away, Mark.
I was going to ask you. You've given it to me straight away. Fantastic. But that's something quite beautiful about Pixar homage to both the future and the past in these films. And fitting them all in nicely, and it was lovely to see Bing Bong make a return as well.
Yes. I love our Easter eggs, both the ones that are traditions and doing new ones. I think those are fun.
Yeah, we've always got a nod to the next film that's after us.
Oh, yeah.
That's in there, so we can't tell you what that is, but that's in there as well.
Yeah, it's in there too. Yeah, we actually went scene by scene and made a whole list of everything that's in the film. So there's lots of stuff to find.
Fantastic. And finally, you have given me a lot of Easter eggs and a lot of nice, juicy exclusives, but I want to know what's the deepest, darkest secret.
You are going to have... you might need to stay and watch the credits.
All the way till the end.
Right.
There may or may not be an answer to your question in the movie theater next time you see it.
Gives you another good reason to see it.
It does, it certainly does, yeah. I suppose it serves me right for running up to this interview.
You were so excited.
Yeah. I'm very glad I did. Thank you both very much for talking to Skwigly today.
Yeah.
Congratulations on Inside Out 2, or Vice Versa 2, as it is here in Annecy.
vice versa.
Je suis désolé.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, great talking with you.
Thanks very much for joining us for this Skwigly Animation 1-to-1. You can watch these videos on our YouTube channel or subscribe to us via your favourite podcast provider. We're a free podcast, but if you'd like to support us, you can do so by leaving a nice review and recommending this podcast to a friend. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can financially support the podcast by scrolling down to the bottom of the Skwigly homepage and clicking the Support Us link. All proceeds help us do the work we do across the site. Thanks again for joining us, and don't forget, for all the latest animation news, reviews, interviews, and everything else from the world of animation, head over to